we get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Hi, everyone. This is Nadia Pataguana. Welcome to another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. And I know you guys love these, and I really love recording these. So here I am back again with one of my amazing coaching clients. I find it amazing how these people are so generous with their time and their stories. I know you guys love to hear these amazing transformations, and we are so lucky and fortunate to work with these wonderful people that want to share their stories. So here I am with I wish you guys could see her, first of all. If you could see her, then I wouldn't have to do any introduction. But this is my most, she looks like a superstar, Linzi. And the funny thing is, I have to give a little bit of background story how Linzi and I met. So Linzi was a community member, a fasting method community member. And I don't remember I think she told me during one of our community meetings that she had seen me at the shopping mall. So we both live in Portugal. How amazing is that? In the same district, maybe not city, but very, very close to each other. And she saw me at the mall with my kids. And my first panic was, oh my God, was I eating something I wasn't supposed to be eating? And then we actually met physically. She came up to me at our kids' it was soccer tournament.
Yes.
And she comes up to me, and the minute she goes, do you know who I am? I was like, yes, I do. Long story short, she became my coaching client. It's been a few months. Her story is amazing. Of course, I've gotten to know a little bit more about her, and I can't wait for you guys to hear more. So I've basically told Linzi that I just want her to tell her story, to introduce herself to you guys, really just to share all the amazing things that she's been doing. I really do think that this will be very helpful to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are going to relate really well to Linzi's story. So without further ado, hi, Linzi. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hi there. How are you? So my name is Linzi Del Conte, and I am currently living in Portugal. I've been here for a little bit over a year. I'm originally from California, Northern California, born and raised, and I had moved around a little bit. So moved out of California when it got a little crazy, moved to Idaho, which opened my eyes to a whole new world. And then after that, right before the pandemic, my family and I moved to Mexico, where my husband is from. And then my sister lived in Portugal, and we came to visit after the pandemic opened up, and we thought, wow, this is amazing. It's so beautiful here. And we work remote, so we can be wherever, whenever. So that's how we kind of got here. I've struggled with my weight my whole life. My grandma was one of those fantastic, amazing cooks. She could make anything, and everybody would gather to her house. Everybody just loved her food. She made homemade tortillas. She was famous for homemade tortillas and refried beans, and also some Puerto Rican dish called dumplings, which is like a donut. And they were just absolutely amazing. I wish I learned how to make that, but it would have been, how when you learn how to make something bad or not, on plan is not good for you. So she watched my sister and I as we were growing up, and I loved to be with her in the kitchen, and I loved to try and over the years replicate her recipes. And I feel like my love for food has really added to, my food addiction just with her. On the other side, though, my parents growing up, they worked really hard for us, and they were always in the fitness realm. And so we'd always have the latest fads of diets. And they were the type of people that they still to this day, and both of my parents are still young and hot looking, as hot as you can look for, in your 60s. Actually, lots of people look great. But they're the type of people that work out on vacation. And I would absolutely hate that as a kid, because we're here to eat and drink and party. What are you guys doing to us? Like, how could you do that? So that was kind of my basis. And I was, pushed to eat healthy. I've been on Weight Watchers. I've been on Jenny Craig. I've been taken to specialist diet doctors. I've had a Korean doctor give me their teas, and it's been a long time. I'm surprised that I didn't get the gastric bypass when everybody was on board, but for some reason, I really didn't want to do that. Also, I made this whole video and applied for The Biggest Loser. I'm glad I didn't do that. I didn't get chosen. Out of high school, my parents divorced, and I had food right by my side to help me cope. It was a hard time, and I had a lot of freedom because, all hell was broken loose with both of them kind of trying to figure out, our journeys. And so I was out of high school, I had a car, and I had access to those bad things. And I could basically do whatever I wanted. My largest was a size 24, and I, over time, just figured out how to deal with my new handicap body. And it just kept getting worse, and I just kind of scooted under the rug. And when I felt bad or sad, I would use food. In California, I was a hairstylist for years, and so I knew how to make myself look presentable on the outside when I was really dying on the inside. And then I met my husband, who met me as I was going up, but he is the most supportive, kind, loving person in the world. He's been with me through, thick and thin. He's also, now to this day, I fast, he fasts. So, it's good to have somebody supportive on your side. Fast forward to, I had 2 kids, and this is where it all started. So in 2011, I was pregnant with my son, and I take that fun diabetes test. And what do you know? I get diabetes. And I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll go ahead and, this will go away, as that's what they tell you, is it'll go away when you're, when you have the baby. I have the baby, and they call me back for a follow-up and, test my levels. And here, what do you know? I have a new baby, and the diabetes didn't go away. And when I was pregnant with him, it was a lot of insulin in the belly, and it was really traumatic. It was not fun. I was also high risk because I lost a baby previous to him at 5 months. So it was just, it was fun. And then I learned how to deal with it, but I didn't really know much, and I didn't really do much. It just took, I think it was just metformin at that point. And then in 2015, I had another child. I had a little girl. And that one was awful. I had to do even more insulin. My high-risk doctors were pumping me like no tomorrow with insulin. I fainted one time, and it was just, they could not get my sugars in control. They'd have me eating 1 million times a day, which I know now is, not good. And it was wild. And so, after I had her, I never got on insulin when I was not pregnant, which was great because I knew how awful insulin was. And then fast forward, I'm a mom. I'm trying to figure this out with kids. And in 2018, 2019, my sister had heard on a podcast, and she said, I heard this doctor about fasting. His name's Dr. Fung, and you should listen. Oh my goodness. And I said, well, that's good. But I love to eat, and I could never not even miss one meal. What are you talking about? And she said, no, really, you have to listen. And so, I got obsessed, and I was wowed. So I got hooked up with Megan, and I coached with Megan in group settings for a while, and I did really, really good. I went from a size 24 to probably a size 16. So that felt really good, and everybody was wowed, and it was easy. And so, I had some really great weight loss and felt comfortable, and then went back to my old ways, moved around a little bit, And then the pandemic scares you. Everything kind of just made me really worried. And with all these moves, and over time, my body was just started feeling like tired. And I know that within 9 or 10 years of being diagnosed of diabetes, that bad things start happening, like cancer, cutting off a leg, going blind, dialysis. I mean, you name it. You hear about these people. It's ran in my family. My grandfather had his leg cut off. I just know what's to come. And I'm now in my 40s. I'm a little bit older, and I know what's ahead of me if I don't change it. So this year I had decided it's time. I need to do it, but I did have a lot going on. So in early February, I had went back to the United States to celebrate my dad's company's 50th anniversary. And one thing about me previous up until now is that when I go places, because here in Portugal, we don't have fast food, we don't have Trader Joe's. And so things like that, convenience food or things that we miss and comforts, it's really hard for me to not have. So when I'm on vacation or now it's different, speeding up to May. But up until then, I would be the type that when I'm on vacation or when I'm out and about, I'm just going to have whatever because I'm celebrating. And I've learned so much since then. I also went to Mexico for spring break, but my husband's family's from there. And so, it's been hard for me. I did start the year fasting, but there was a masterclass that I had heard from the podcast, Megan's masterclass that started in mid-April, I believe, of this year. And so the day that I came back is the day that masterclass started. And that was okay, I'm doing it. I'm not stopping. This is it. And so I'm so glad and so thankful that I did take this masterclass because boy, have things changed from what I thought I knew to now. And I'll pause there.
Okay. One thing, I have so much feedback.
That was a lot.
However, I was shocked that I know all of that, which means that I've gotten to know you pretty well, Linzi, which is amazing because sometimes we do these podcasts and I'm sitting in front of a coaching client and I learn things about them that I didn't know, which is amazing for me. It's like I'm listening, I'm meeting the person for the first time. But with you, it's like, yeah, knew all of that. We know each other pretty well. But how much I can relate and we can relate, our friends listening in can relate to all the things that you're saying. Living abroad is a funny thing. It's not that there is no junk food in Portugal. Maybe just none of the junk food here interests you.
No, there is. It's just not like,
right. I can relate because when my girls and I, so being from North America, right, being raised, I talk about this all the time because Portuguese people really do have still very much traditional ways of eating. Most restaurants that you go to are very much, mom and pops kind of.
Yeah.
And so that's still the culture, right? That's still the culture. People eat home most of the time. The pandemic was hard on most people, but mostly I feel like on foreigners. There's a lot of foreigners where Linzi and I live. I think, Portuguese people, if anything, did more home kind of like things. Whereas I ordered, I think, Uber Eats 3 times a day during the pandemic. It was terrible. And so when my girls and I go back to Canada to visit, we go through the same thing that you go through, like this whole, how many restaurants can we hit in one day kind of thing? Cause you just miss it. That is a trap for sure.
It's awful.
There's so much of an emotional connection, right, to those things and memories, nostalgia.
Yeah. And it's funny that, you can even look back on your pictures of when you go back to the United States and it's like, wow, I was so bloated. Because I think before my US trip, I had fasted for 5 days before I had even gone. And so I felt great going in, but I knew what I was going to do to myself. I know. And so I feel like after coaching with you and knowing all that I know now, I have the right toolbox to be able to deal with that now.
And I want to talk a little bit about that because that's exactly it. So like I was saying, my girls and I go back to Canada, but of course there's some strategies and tips. And because you still want to live, life gets in the way. I say this all the time. It's all about repetition with me, as you know, Linzi, but it really is about figuring out how to live in this world that's not as whole food and healthy as we'd like it to be. And we're going to be exposed to all of these things. So, the girls and I went to Canada in February. So we had an experience there of how do we navigate this? And so these are the kind of things that we're learning together and we want to share, right? We want to share with people. So what I hear you say is a lot, some pretty amazing things. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate so much to your journey. And then, you met Megan, you joined the group coaching program. That was amazing. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit and that trip to the US, life got in the way. And unfortunately, you weren't at a place yet where you had the tools to maybe create what we now work on together, a very strong holding pattern, a really good recovery plan, to really focus on your therapeutic journey for the time required until you reach your goal, all of the things that we are now working on together. Life hit. The pandemic was unprecedented. I was not ready for it. You were not ready for it. Nobody was ready for it. Yeah. We weren't ready for the amount of time that we were going to be in that situation and just for living life in a totally different way. And so, of course, I actually worked with some amazing people during that time because they were in the community during that time. That's actually when our community got strongest, I think, and it grew a whole ton. But it was this idea that, okay, I can't control the world. And this is still the idea that we're running with, right? I cannot control the world. I cannot control what's out there. I can't even control what happens to my life sometimes. But there are some things that I can control. And it feels pretty powerful once you figure out how to control certain things. And that's what we're trying to work on together. So tell us more. Okay. So you did the masterclass and that was amazing.
Yep.
And then?
So I took Megan's masterclass and boy, that blown my mind because here I am where I thought that I had knew everything that I had learned back in 2019. And this program has changed and evolved so much since then. I mean, I was not doing, and back in 2019, I don't even remember learning about time restricted eating. So I kind of felt like it was almost like having a kid again 10 years later when all of the baby gear has changed and you don't know what you're doing. So where do I even begin? First of all, when I first had my first meeting with Nadia, she's like, "You're not time restricted eating." I'm like, "Yes, I am." She's like, "Coffee with milk? That's not." And she's not scolding me. She's just, kind of clowning me, making me think, "Oh my gosh, you're right." Backstory. So when I lost all my weight, I was living in Idaho at the time, and I worked at a salon that had those little white Lifesaver mints, and I would pop those all day long. And that's what made me lose all my weight. And now thinking, and I think at the end I saw the sugar content on the back of those, but they were just provided, so you don't see like the nutritional content. Those things had 10 grams of sugar per mint. And I thought after, oh my God, I can't believe I've been consuming it. But I lost so much weight. I would also have coffee with milk that looks, almost like a latte. I really like light colored coffee. What else would I do? I mean, just, gum to kind of keep me going. And Nadia said, anything that you do is going to raise your blood sugar. And that was like a, oh my God moment. Wow. I didn't realize that. Okay. So, doing these little tweaks and these little things that I've learned. Also, another big one that I've learned was with Megan. She talks a lot about fasting burnout. And I think myself and everybody else, when you start fasting, you just want to get rid of it. You just want to be done with it. So you start off with the most aggressive fast. I still to this day do that. And so I'll start and be like, I'm going to do a 7-day fast. And, you get to day 3 and it's like, oh my God, I can't handle it. And then, you go back and then you beat yourself up. So Megan, now with all of the different programs that they have, and there's a sheet of all of that Nadia has with all of these different fasts, they're short and easy and to the point. They're not as hard as they used to be. And I just feel like, wow, it's a lot easier than it was before. So that makes things a little bit doable. I also took Terry's masterclass after because I was just so juiced and so excited about Megan's class. I thought, you know what, I need more. Terry, her class was about healthy habits and mindsets. And that was like a church session where everybody in these live meetings it was funny because everybody has the same emotions, emotional damage, and all of the same old issues revolving food. And it was a huge wow. In the stream of things, I thought, you know what, I really, really, so in my mind, I had thought, okay, I really want to have diabetes gone by my birthday. So I thought, I need to do these coaching sessions. And since Nadia's close and I love her, and I think that, she's a great resource to have. We're on the same time zone. She can read Portuguese and might have any little tips and tricks. I'm going to choose Nadia. I started coaching with Nadia, and wow, I mean, she's been fantastic. And I thought of it this time. Another thing that I wanted to say is my whole life, everybody's wanted it for me, but I've wanted it, but I haven't really wanted it. And this time, the light switch, it turned on, and this is my time. It's now or never is what I've told myself. So May 1st was my big time. I'm doing it. I'm not looking back, and I'm going for it hardcore. So I thought of Nadia as a purse. She's my purse. That's what I think about in my head is she's the price of a purse, and she's a very valuable one. And so those are what my sessions are is she's my purse.
I told you I was going to laugh my head off during
sorry.
this. I just knew it because you are so extra. Every coaching session that we have, I laugh my head off. Your hair is always perfect. Your
not perfect.
Eyelashes. Oh my God. Only you think it's not. You're so extra. And that you would describe me as your luxury purse. I love it. But okay, I have to.
That's how I had to sell myself.
That makes so much sense. Oh my God. If people could only know you and see you, that would make so much more sense. But I have to stop you there because you've said a few things that I think you may not even realize how priceless they are and how people need to hear this. You finally decided and committed to doing this for yourself. You had a very strong why. And once you decided that you were going to do this, nothing was going to stop you. And this is exactly what people need to hear. They need to hear that, your whole family can want this for you. Your husband, your spouse, your children, everybody can be worried. And you know that when you go through this journey, right, you always find people in your life that you really want to help, and you have all the info to give them, and you have all the time and effort and patience, and you want to help them, and you give them all the tools, but they're just not ready and they can't absorb it. But you're ready, and you got yourself to that point,
Yeah.
Starting in 2019, you're right that I think our program has grown and evolved so much. We have a great team. Megan has done a really great job. The masterclasses, I think, were another, and you mentioned two of them. I think the masterclasses, and Megan and Terry recently released a podcast explaining, how the masterclasses came to be. And I had the immense opportunity of doing a couple of masterclasses, one with a couple of team members and one for women's health myself. And so doing a masterclass or taking a masterclass really is amazing. It's an opportunity to do this sort of intensive course, in a step-by-step manner. I'm a big fan of doing things in a process, step-by-step, not skipping steps. I know that the minute that I got you there, it was like, okay, let's talk about TRE. This is the foundation of everything. This is the key to your success, the epitome of intermittent fasting, the Beyonce of the show. Everyone's heard me say that a million times. But I really, truly do believe that, once we got this therapeutic program set up with the right steps, we are seeing wonderful results because fasting is not complicated, right? As you said, you've done it in the past, you've done 5-day fasts, and it's like, I can fast. So why am I not consistently being successful? Well, we needed to sort of put all of this together. And luckily, our team has done a great job with that. So I just wanted to really point out a couple of the things that you've said, because I know people are listening in. And the key component here was that you were ready. You're doing this for yourself. Nobody's telling you to do this. Nobody's forcing you. You want to do it. It's not easy though.
No.
Right. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. You've got 2 little kids. You've got a family. You've got a really busy job. One of the reasons why I was so excited about having you here on the podcast and having people listen to your story is because we work with a lot of postmenopausal women and men, right? Postmenopausal men, retired men. But the one thing that retired people tell us is that, they've got the time now, and now they've decided to make their health their full-time job. That's amazing that they can do that. But guess what? Linzi and I cannot do that. We are, I think you're a few years younger than me, but we're, similar age children, and very busy working. And not just, we work with some really busy people. Yeah. And so how do we make this work? Because again, it's not easy, but it is simple. So we got to take advantage of the simplicity of things. So tell us a little bit about that. Your life, how are you making this work?
So I was starting May 1st. I also thought I cannot have my kids crunching around me and, eating those things. We pretty much kind of had somewhat quote unquote healthy items in the house. But as of May 1st, I thought, okay, I got to enlist these kids because they got to know and they have to learn a foundation with me. And they're supportive and they're always scared, of losing their mom. And they know a little bit about it because I talk about it, and I just think that they know they're smart. They're 11 and 8. So May 1st, I gave them we called it a no chip challenge, but it was just basically no snacks. And I told them, if you choose, because I learned this from Terry, it's not, you cannot, it's choosing. If you choose not to, have snacks for the rest of the month, you will be rewarded with a extra allowance. And they had parties and they had, events at school, and they chose to choose the good snack. And so I was so proud of them. And I know it's not about them, but I do need them that sooner or later, they're going to one day, they're going to leave the nest and they need to be able to fend for themselves and, not go crazy like I did, even whatever circumstances may be. And so now we're working on time restricted eating, and they know that, if they want a fruit or something at the end of their meal, they eat it at the dinner table. And, we're not snacking anymore because it's not good for your body. So that's one big help. They also have been helping with cooking. So that kind of helps. And they know on my fasting days what to make, little things. Sometimes they'll need help and I can kind of micromanage from afar. And that's kind of been working out because I've realized if I see it, smell it, even try it, when you're cooking, you sometimes have to taste stuff. It's not going to work. So that's one good thing. I do plan at the beginning of the week what they're going to eat and what we're going to eat and my fast according to that. And that's worked out pretty well. And also one big thing that I've learned is, the 5 pillars. There's 2 major pillars that don't have anything to do with any of this. And they have taken such a big factor: stress. So talking about my job, I am a sales and marketing director for 2 large companies. It's in California. So my phone rings later here in the day. And it's really stressful because I have, things coming at me from all different directions. And previous to May 1st, I, was taking calls at 11 p.m. at night. And I thought, I have to choose myself. So I get as much work as I can done. And I'm going to tell these guys, you know what? It is what it is. And they know, and they feel bad bugging me late at night, but I tell them that it's okay. Well, it's no longer okay. I have to set my alarm to go to bed, some type of something to say, okay, I'm going to go to bed at 10. And also, Nadia said, no TV in your room, or no watching TV before bed. That's helped. That's huge. And then also morning sunlight, that's a really, really big one. But stress, huge. It's been so good for me to kind of, and the last couple of weeks it's our crazy season, and I've kind of started getting wrapped up in it again. And I'm trying to tell myself on a daily basis, don't get obviously get wrapped up in it and care, but you gotta choose yourself, right? So, I'm not going to, if somebody wants to talk to me at 10 p.m. my time or 10:30, let's talk tomorrow. The good thing is most of our team works early. And so they all call me on their drives in because they all commute and stuff. So I figured out a way to work it out and make it work for me, because at the end of the day, this is my success and I got to put myself first.
I feel like we can wrap it up. You've said it all, girl.
I have.
Joke.
Oh, okay.
That was big though.
Yeah.
It was big because I'm so glad that you highlighted the stress component. So my 5 pillars, let's repeat them here quickly for everyone. For those that haven't heard me say it a million times, right? Again, I'm a big fan of repetition. So these 5 pillars over the last 20 years that I've been working in this particular field, right, of metabolic health, and especially after working with Megan and Jason in this program, and I started with them 7 years ago. It was just, everything just became so clear to me, right? When you're looking at labs and you're looking at all the things that we're doing, I've said this, I'm a very systematic person. I like to put things down in charts and lists and steps. And so that works for me, right? It works for me. It keeps my crazy head organized. And so my way of journaling is actually to write blog posts,
Oh, wow.
right? This is the way I journal this is why I have a website. It's because whenever something comes into my head, I'm like, oh my God, I got to write it down, right? So instead of having a little diary, which I did when I was younger, and I always encourage people to keep a journal of some sort, I realized that my way of journaling is writing blogs because I'm a vector, right? I say this a lot. I'm a vector, and I'm very fortunate to be a vector because I learn a lot. I'm exposed to a lot of brilliant people. So I learn a ton, right? I get to really analyze it clinically. I get to analyze it anecdotally. And then being a vector, I get to transmit this information. I like to sort of process it in my head and put it into lists and things so that it makes sense to me. And then hopefully it'll make sense to other people. So the 5 pillars came about a long time ago. And I realized after doing working in the intermittent fasting world that first and foremost, you mentioned TRE, time restricted eating. I call it the Beyonce of the show. It's how we eat. Ultimately, this is it, right? This is what you're working on with your kids. This is what you're working on with yourself. How we eat is ultimately going to be that key component that's going to be part of your success. Why is this so important? I tell people it's not only important because this is what your eating days should look like. So at least half of your program, right? TRE, your eating days, how you eat. Time restricted eating actually means intermittent eating, not necessarily fasting, right? Intermittent eating. And this is something that we are not currently, hasn't become the norm. The norm has become snacking and grazing, not having a full meal, eating while you're working, eating while, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on. I've said this many times that I think we need a masterclass in TRE. I hope that Megan agrees. And one day we can make this happen, a whole masterclass on TRE, because really this is the key, right? How we eat. Next, there's so much more I want to say there, but we've had 2 whole podcasts on TRE.
Yeah.
Next is when we eat. So the critical importance of meal timing, understanding that there's a circadian rhythm here, a day-night cycle. Then what we eat, right? Choosing better foods. And this is something that, we've got a lot of experience on. We can definitely help people with that component as well. But then there's stress and sleep management. And it kind of seems out of place here, right? Like you said, because these 3 things are actually pretty simple. How we eat, when we eat, and what we eat, pretty simple. Stress and sleep management, much more challenging, but it actually should be switched around. Stress and sleep should be the first 2 pillars, because unless you got that figured out, everything else is going to be so much harder. It's going to be so much harder to choose what to eat because of your cravings. It's going to be so much harder to choose how to eat and to have full meals if you're stressed and emotionally eating all day. So stress and sleep. Coach Lisa created this amazing cortisol lowering technique list, which I've shared with you and is available in our program. And really, it's this idea that no matter how stressed you are, no matter how busy you are, in fact, because of how stressed you are and how busy you are, you need more cortisol lowering techniques. So it's looking at that list. You mentioned a few, my favorites actually, getting up and getting the early morning sunshine, going to bed early, getting rid of screens and things.
Eating before the sun goes down. That was another huge one for me. And now I'm like a senior citizen eating at, 3-4 o'clock, my dinner, because I know that my body needs time to get the blood sugar going before you go to bed. And that one's been huge too. That's really, really big.
Well, as somebody with diabetes or a pre-diabetic or somebody at risk for diabetes, if you check your blood sugars, and I challenge everyone listening in, if you haven't already done this, I know people are familiar and aware of the dawn effect, that first morning blood sugar, the what it reflects, right? Because it is a true reflection of your insulin resistance. It tells you how well you've been doing, how well yesterday went. It tells you if something is coming up, like if you're coming down with a cold, a flu, that first morning blood sugar will be way higher than usual. So it alerts you it's a red flag. I challenge you, if you haven't tried this, have that exact same meal before sunset and then have that exact same meal after sunset and plot your dawn effect, your fasting blood sugar, your first morning blood sugar, and you'll see what a significant difference that makes from day to day. So it is a healing protocol.
And it's worked great.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I wanted to interrupt you there, because, bringing up this whole stress and sleep component, I know it's the hardest thing. It's actually a lot harder to deal with your stress and sleep than it is to deal with how you eat when you eat and what you eat.
Mhm.
But it is part of our 5 pillars. It's part of our program. It's part of the 5 things that Linzi and I have been doing together.
Absolutely. And in with the sleep, sometimes when you're fasting, you've got all this energy and you kind of can't go to sleep. Well, there's another tool in the toolbox. Coach Larry has a sleep tea of Bite Natural that works so amazing for me. I mean, I think, oh, it's not working. And then I'm knocked out. I'm like a kid, I'm not tired. Oh, I'm out. So, that really, really has helped too. It just seems like being in the community, there's so many different things that, have really, really helped, little tips and tricks that I wouldn't have known. Also, I wanted to mention another thing that's been amazing for me. So, in with my background of all these Weight Watcher meetings and Jenny Craig and all of this, when I first saw the first couple meetings, this is within the community. There's about 30 to 40 meetings a week. And the first time I thought, oh, these are just all old people complaining, or, these are just, I guess that was my mindset of what I had thought before. But then I really got involved and, I started off with being nervous, and I've always hidden from everything. I was hiding my weight when everybody could see it. It's there, always trying to mute it, I guess you can say. And so I, embarrassed and shy to even participate. And then one day I said, you know what? It's now or never. So you got to do it. So I turned on my camera and, I'm actively participating in these meetings. And let me tell you, there's not one person that does these meetings that's better than the other. Each person has their own special background of things that they are just amazing. I mean, I was told Nadia, I said, I want to go to the mountaintops and scream, how great this is and how much it's changed for me and how much of a game changer, because I take notes every meeting, for the most part. There's always something that you learn, as well as the community. The community is not like internet trolls where they're out there being crazy with, what they say. All of these people are loving and supporting and like brothers and sisters. It's something that I've never seen. And let me tell you, if I have a week that's, extra hard, I want to attend more meetings, because these meetings help me stay on track. And these people are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. Even if I choose not to turn on my camera one day, or I'm driving, I will still listen to these meetings and try and be as active as possible, because this is one of the biggest things, because, I don't have Nadia coaching with Nadia every week, that has helped with my success. And in with my success, I haven't been focusing on the weight. The weight is just an added bonus. My true goal is to get rid of my diabetes and get my A1C down. So, I haven't been focused on that, which has been really, really helpful for me, because, those numbers at times could really, really make or break your week and really set the tone. And I don't want to play games anymore like that. So when I'm feeling it, I'm going to weigh, but otherwise my blood sugar numbers are telling me what's going on and what's right and what's wrong.
Okay. Well, speaking of the community, I'm so glad that you said that, because this is another, as I was saying earlier, another amazing thing that came out of the pandemic was the fact that our community grew so much stronger, and it just seemed like attract like. And we often say that is the safest, most comforting, supportive place that I think any of us have been in. So it's not just you, I think, that has this feeling. It's just a very general feeling, like we're all ourselves. We're all very different. I have a reputation for being this tough love kind of a person, but I'm very involved in the community. I very much, at some point, before I went back to doing executive coaching, that's all about finding the balance. I was doing 9 of my own community meetings a week, because that's how much I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm doing 2 community meetings a week, because I'm back to doing one-on-one executive coaching. So, eventually I'll find the right balance, because I really do miss being in the community more. And I couldn't agree with you more. You said, I no longer get to speak to Nadia every week, which is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of our coaching program will probably start with weekly sessions and then every 2 weeks. And I think now we're probably down to once a month, something like that.
Yeah. With summertime, it's crazy. So,
Yeah.
I would like to do more, but it's just our schedules don't work out. But you can always turn on the computer and listen while you're doing something.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's something that I tell my clients right on the first coaching session, because I will not speak to them. It's not that I won't speak to them weekly. I might, but I can't speak to them every day.
Yeah.
I would like to, but that's impossible. So I really like the way our program flows right now, because not only do you have the coaching sessions, but you have that daily support from the community and the other coaches, right? Like I'm in there on Tuesdays. All the other coaches are in there every other day of the week, including Saturdays. So it's really, really helpful. There's a lot of live meetings. There's the forum, the community forum, which I think is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
In the forum, you can also find accountability buddies, but I don't know if you've done that. I feel like you and I might be each other's accountability buddies.
Yeah, I don't have the time to scroll through all that and read it, because when is there time? So I haven't really
there's a lot
crazy.
of activity.
Yeah.
Which is great, because people that need to have, activity and need to have constant support, it's there. But if you're very, very busy, and you might not even need that, you just need to show up to a meeting here and there and be held accountable. So now let's talk about your weight, because I found it interesting that you mentioned that it's not about the numbers for you anymore. And I think that's been a big part of your success, because you've trusted the process. You knew the process already from 2019. So you definitely came into this with a lot of trust, which I think is a key component, right?
Right.
People should do their research. I had a meeting yesterday with somebody, an executive intake session. That's like our first 15-minute free call to get to know each other, to figure out if the program is a good fit for you. And this wonderful lady asked me, do you think I should do executive coaching? And right away, the minute that she asked me that, I said, no, I don't. Because I think that we're so busy, Megan, myself, and Terry, with executive coaching, with people that absolutely 100% want to do executive coaching, that I don't think it's a good idea to have somebody do executive coaching, put all that time and effort and financial effort into doing executive coaching if you're not quite sure that that's what the right fit is for you.
Yeah.
Then I found out that she hasn't even been in our community. So I went, oh, well, I definitely think that if you haven't been in there, then you don't know what you're missing. The amount of information, support. And of course, I understand why people do executive one-on-one coaching. Otherwise, why would we be there? But I definitely think that you will know if you should or need or want to do executive coaching, but you may not know what you're missing if you're not aware of the immense amount of support and resources that there are within the fasting method community.
Yeah, absolutely.
About the weight, the only thing I wanted to say was you sent me a picture, 2 pictures.
I did. So yes, back in 2019, I got, skinny, not skinny, but I was about a size 14, and now I'm there. I officially made it there. And while I made it there, I had that week of, oh my God, I'm here at, the smallest I've been. And what am I going to do now? How am I going to navigate this? Because that's the time, every time that I go backwards. And so how am I going to change this time around? And I've been holding on. It's been crazy with the end of the year, summertime events. I've had a couple of times where I've not stuck to my foods, but the exciting thing that's changed this time around is I've stuck to it and I've gone back to it. Before, what I would do is I would use that as a gate, an opening of the gate, and just go wild. And so I now my body doesn't even feel good when I have something that's not within my plan. But yes, my weight is now down. Now, I still haven't bought anything because, all of my clothes either hang in or look great on me. And that's another thing is before, when you're heavy, there's so much editing to do if you care. Some people don't care, but I care. And I'd always feel so gross in my skin, if that is even a thing. And now it's like, I can do anything. I don't have to work so hard at trying to edit my handicapped, edit everything. And so it feels really great. And I know that there's so much more to go. But yes, so I'm at my smallest weight. I haven't weighed since that smallest weight because I know I'm just mine. I don't want to play mind games with myself. And so I plan on it, but I don't have a date yet of when I'm going to go. And I feel great. So yes, but I just really don't want to play games. And I know that, some people in the community are really focused on their weight. And I don't want this to be about my weight because I can already see in the mirror that it's not about my weight. But I don't mind if you, want to post and or share my heaviest versus my thinnest.
I might do that.
Yeah,
I haven't done that. I might send those pictures to Rachel. I think
you can,
forgot.
but
I really should.
It's a to be continued type situation because I'm
speaking
not
of
done.
To be continued, I feel like you and I need to do an episode 2.
Okay.
Because in a few months, just think about how today went and how much you had to share. Imagine how much you'll have to share with us in a few months. But there's a few things here that you mentioned that I really wanted to talk a little bit about, because so many people listening in can so relate to the self-talk, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we see ourselves, the way that we see our bodies, right? This feeling of, you mentioned the word handicapped. I mean, there's just so much here. And even though I would love to talk more about it, I just wanted to highlight it because we do really have a lot of support around that. Coach Terry, her masterclasses, her meetings, this is a key component here, right? And this is a work in progress. Yeah. We're working on how we talk to ourselves, or more positive self-talk, celebrating our victories along the way, which I do think you're very, very good at, even though you're very funny, even though you bring up a lot of things in a very amusing type of way. I do think that you've done a really great job on working on all of that. One thing that you mentioned about the weight, I fully agree that if the scale messes with your emotions, if the scale tends to define your worth for you, you should stay as far away from it as possible. I know Megan talks about this all the time, throw out that lying scale. There's so many other ways to measure your progress. There's a whole list of NSVs, not scale victories, that Coach Lisa has created in our forum. I mean, there's so many other ways. I do talk about this in my coaching sessions, as you know, different ways to measure success, and my thoughts on weight versus body composition, right? Because I'm very big on body composition, much more so than weight. How to do measurements properly, right? Waist to hip ratio, waist to height ratio, what they mean, and things like that. Which day of the week, what time to actually do these measurements, how to compare, how often you should do it. It's something that can come up, but we definitely try to stay away as much as we can from the scale, right? Because it cannot define your worth. BMI, we could do a whole session on BMI alone, body mass index. All right. So I've taken up a lot of your time today. You've given us a lot. I really honestly want to invite you to come in, if you will accept.
Sure.
In a few months, tell us a little bit more, because this is important, right? I mean, you've done a lot of hard work here, obviously.
I have. And I also, I had a couple of rough weeks, and I wasn't able to complete the fast that I had set forth for myself for like 3 weeks straight, and kept, interrupting my fast with good things. But I was also beating myself up, and I had the community there to support me. And that's what kind of helped me through it. And I'm still on the horse. I'm not falling off. And so it's a work in progress, big time.
And as I always say, to be continued.
Yeah.
This was amazing, Linzi. Thank you so much. I couldn't thank you enough. I know you're very, very busy. It's early for you and I. We decided to do this early to get it out of the way so we could go on with our crazy busy lives. But I really, really appreciate it. Okay. I will for sure right now share that picture that you sent me with Rachel, because that would be, since you've agreed so graciously, that would be such a great visual for people, especially younger women, busy women like you. It's really nice to feel represented, right? To know that in this community, we've got a whole bunch of people. And I often say this in my meetings, we're a lot more like my friends than we are different. I'm quoting Maya Angelou, of course. And I truly, truly believe this. This was really, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
You and I won't talk for a couple of weeks because I'll be off, but can't wait to see how you're doing when I come back.
All righty. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a great week. Happy fasting, everyone. Take care.